Today we're playing a not so well known but still beloved favorite, ActRaiser, until we win. ActRaiser is a very interesting game. It's part action platformer, part city development simulation, and the parts come together with a very audible clunk. Still, it was a very nice game, especially for the Super Nintendo, so you have to give developer QuintEt an applause. Who's QuintEt, you might ask? Why, they only developed games like ActRaiser, ActRaiser 2, Terranigma, Robotrek, and The Illusion of Gaia. They developed some pretty good, intense games. Now, for the US release of ActRaiser, the difficulty's actually toned down significantly, but the Japanese release is much harder. Therefore, while we have the American card, especially for English, we're going to play it on the professional mode, that is the Japanese difficulty, or the hardest mode there is. So let's get to it. The game is really simple. Run around, kill things, make sure you humans don't die, and then kill more things. Rinse and repeat until you've won. There are some tricks to the game though. Your score counts. The higher the score you get in the action sequences, the higher population you can achieve in the simulation. You level up by getting a larger population, not by experience points, so therefore, the more points you get in the action sequence, the more you can level up. During the city building phase, you're limited to 128 units on screen, either houses, farms, windmills, estates, or bridges. A good trick to maximizing your population is to carefully construct your cities so that they only have one bridge, when possible. After your first playthrough of this game, you'll get the feeling that your simulation powers outside of rain, lightning, and sun are actually pretty useless, and for the most part, they're limited to specific sections of the game. However, the earthquake is actually very useful as it destroys buildings. How is that useful? Well, every city has a civilization level from 0 to 3. As you destroy monster lairs, your civilization level will increase. Civilization level 3 buildings cannot be destroyed by earthquakes. They also hold more people, 8 to be exact, increasing your total population. So, when you reach level 3, cause an earthquake, it'll destroy all the older buildings, but your city will actually redevelop. Therefore, you get a larger population. Don't worry though, even if the city status screen says that city development is slow or stopped, destroying houses will cause the city to develop quickly until you reach max. Another tip, as soon as you're able to change farmland from corn to wheat, do it as often as possible. Wheat supports far more people than cornfields, and fewer wheat fields are built than cornfields. In other words, wheat will net you about twice the population you could normally get with corn. Now don't worry too much about people getting killed by the various monsters on the screen. Until you reach maximum, your city will always be developing. As long as you keep killing the monsters, and they are relatively easy to kill, you'll outpace the souls lost versus the souls gained. Also, when you close a monster's lair, well, you pretty much gain almost all of the lost souls back, plus a few extras. Now, the action sequences in this game aren't that difficult, to be completely honest with you. The platforming is pretty easy, and the enemies, for the most part, aren't too hard. The only advice I can give you, though, is to take it slow, especially on a professional level. You're really going to want to kill almost every enemy that pops up on screen, because in some form or another, they can hurt you, especially when they're above or below you and they throw rocks. Isn't that fun? ActRaiser's simulation game is dead simple. You control this little angel, and with him you can fire arrows to kill enemies, direct the population where to grow, and destroy obstacles preventing the population from growing. It's not complicated at all. If it wasn't for the timer restricting how fast the population can grow, you could actually breeze by this section in under 10 minutes. As it stands though, each city building section takes roughly half an hour to complete. Now, there are a couple of puzzles in these city building sections that you really don't have to worry about because they're dead simple. Honestly, there's not much for you to do. You don't really have to figure anything out. Basically what happens is you'll beat both bosses and the city will somehow end up in this crisis state. Either they'll start fighting with each other, or there'll be this, epidemic, or things like that. Basically, all you have to do is move on to another city until you get the right item that fixes their problem. You get the item, you give it to the people, and then they're happy. There's not a whole lot of thought put into it, basically. Still, it can hang you up, especially if you're wondering just what the hell you're supposed to do next. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the simulation and all the tips. Let's talk about the rest of the game. The action sequences really aren't that spectacular. I mean, they're some of the easiest platforming I've played since Spyro the Dragon. It's just not much to talk about. You run forward and you get to the boss and try to kill the boss, and don't die in between. That's all I can say about them. Of course, the boss enemies are a bit difficult. Act 1-1, the Centaur Knight. This guy is pretty easy, even on professional mode. Just crouch down and slash at his legs a few times. When he pulls back, he's going to attack you with his lance. Just run in the opposite direction and you'll avoid the thrust. He also has this lightning attack. He'll bring his lance straight up in the air and a ball of electricity will flash on the tip. Run away and the lightning won't hit you. Basically, anytime you have an opportunity, run in and smack him in the knees. Act 1-2, the Minotaur. This one is a pain in the ass. He jumps up and then tries to land on you, so you've got to always be moving in one direction, otherwise you'll get crushed. Of course, jumping isn't his only attack. He also swings an axe that shoots out this blue axe, both of which you need to avoid. So the strategy here is pretty simple. Move around until he lands, jump up to avoid the axe, then get in close and smack him once or twice with your sword. Repeat until he's dead. Act 2-1, the Night Creature. This one is just a joke. Simply get to the upper right-hand corner of the screen, dodge his fireballs, and swing away. You just have to wait in the corner and you'll never have to do what I did, running around on screen trying to hit him as many times as possible. Act 2-2, the Wizard. The Wizard has two forms. In his first, he'll teleport around the screen, shoot a three-way fireball, and then shoot 3 beams of lightning. Essentially, all you need to do is avoid the fireballs, get in close enough so the lightning doesn't hit you, and then smack him with your sword until half of his life is depleted. His second form is a werewolf, and it's not too difficult. All you really need to do is smack him with your sword until he dies. He'll jump around a lot and summon 3 wolf heads to attack you, but unless you've got the reflexes of a drunk snail, you'll be able to take him down. Act 3-1, the Sand Lion. Another easy boss. This one, you really don't have to worry about too much. All you have to do is get in close, keep hitting him with your sword, and just avoid the pinchers. If you get caught by the pinchers, it'll take out a lot more health, but you can just jump over them and it won't be that much of a problem. Act 3-2, the Golden Pharaoh Head. This one can cause you some issues. The Pharaoh Head won't come down unless you cross underneath him, and he fires out a blue energy ball which sticks to the wall and then turns into a face that fires arrows at you. Don't ask me, I don't quite understand it myself. Avoid getting crushed, jump over the energy ball and hit him a couple of times. Then you've got to jump up to avoid the arrow being fired from the other side of the room. Do this a few times and you'll take him out. Just remember to avoid that arrow because that can be a killer. Act 4-1, the Serpent. This guy can be challenging unless you obtain the Blade Beam earlier in the stage. In fact, this is the only stage where you're able to obtain the Blade Beam. If you have the beam, just stand in one corner of the screen and beat up the serpent until you win. If you don't have the blade, then good luck. You'll have to time your jumps carefully in order to avoid getting knocked around, and you'll only be able to get 1 or 2 hits in before you need to avoid the snake. Really, just make sure you get the beam and you'll be set. Act 4-2, The Flaming Wheel. Oh man, this one is a problem. He'll follow you around the screen, jump up and around the platforms, and occasionally jump to the middle of the screen and fire energy balls in every direction. He's not easy. If you have the Stardust magic from the simulation, use it. It makes damaging this guy much easier. Otherwise, you'll have to hit and run and try not to take too much damage. Act 5-1, The Giant Plant. Yet another easy first part boss. You really don't have to worry about this guy too much. There is a vine that can be a little bit of a problem that sticks out of the water. All you really need to do is jump over it, move to one side of the screen, and then jump back to the other side of the screen. Jump up a few times, hit the plant in the blue middle, and you've won. Act 5-2, Some Mystical Flying God. This one is a pain. He flies in the middle of the room and is completely unreachable by jumping. If you run under him, he'll try to crush you, and if you stay away, he'll send the ceiling down to crush you. On top of that, he fires these lightning bolts that home in on you. So, avoid the lightning, then force him to send the ceiling down. You jump on top of the ceiling, crouch down, and swing your sword at him as you come up. It takes a while to do this, and it's probably going to take you a few times before you actually master what it is you have to do, but stick with it, practice, and you'll be able to beat him with no problems. Act 6-1, The Gargoyle, and yet another easy first part boss. Really, there's not much strategy to this one. If you're lucky, you'll be able to stand in one corner and wail away on him until he's dead. If not, all you have to do is employ a hit and run strategy. There's not much thought to it. Act 6-2, The Ice Dragon. Let's not mince words here. You'll die. You'll die a lot trying to kill this guy. He is a pain in the butt. Basically, he's got 2 attack patterns. The first pattern, he swoops down from the top of the screen over to the side, knocking you back a bit. Every time he hits you, he takes off 2 to 4 hit points, and that's a good chunk of your health. His second attack pattern is he hovers in the air, and he fires this ice fireball at you. The problem is, if it misses you and hits the ground, it shatters into 4 pieces, and if any of those pieces hit you, it takes 2 to 4 hit points off. In other words, this guy is a pain. You have 2 options here. You can use the light magic that summons this beam of light from the Sky Temple right underneath him, and it'll damage him a few times. Your other option is to sort of wait it out until he's hovering, then get behind him and smack him in the butt with your sword. Really, this guy isn't easy at all, especially on professional mode. He'll kill you in just a few hits. Just take your time, plan your jumps, and try to avoid him as much as possible. It's the only advice I could give you. And also, good luck. Deathheim. Haim. Haim? Deathheim? The last stage. Do you remember all those really hard bosses you just fought? Like the Ice Dragon or the Minotaur? Yeah. Well, guess what? You've got to fight them all over again. You've got to fight them all in a row. You've got to do it with only 1 health bar. You only have 3 chances at this. And oh, by the way, they're all incredibly faster than they were before, making this ridiculously difficult. On top of that, you've got to fight a final boss that you've never faced before. Welcome to hell! The biggest difference here is that you've got to be much more precise with your jumps than you did before. Most of the enemies move much faster now, and they take a lot more damage than they did before. On top of that, their attack areas have all increased. It's a problem. But if you follow the same strategies that you did before, you should be able to get up to the final boss. Of course, that's going to take practice. You see, the strategies might be similar, but because of the attack area and the speed, you're going to have to be much more accurate with your attacks than you were before. Good luck. Of course, the final boss is pretty difficult. He wouldn't be a final boss if he wasn't difficult. In his first form, he'll just shoot these meteors at you and some fireballs. It's actually pretty easy. Avoid the meteors, avoid the fireballs, and slash away at his face until he transforms. His second form is a pain. He'll fire these 4 fireballs at you, then these round fireballs that sort of home in on your position, and then he fires this blue fireball. You can only harm him when his chest plate is open. He only opens it up to fire the blue fireball. Swing your sword to attack him with the blade beam, which you magically have in this battle, hit him a couple of times, and eventually he'll die. Well, that's ActRaiser, folks. It's a fun little game, but hard as hell on professional level. It's short, it's sweet, but it's oh so satisfying. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go outside and burn some ants.